It was Lucas's birthday party that day and I woke up at 5:30. Not because of an alarm. My internal clock had been rewired years ago during those early parenting days. The sky was still dark. A soft pink-orange glow barely touched the kitchen window. I sat up quietly. The house was still. The only sounds were the steady tick of the wall clock and the sudden hiss of the neighbor's sprinkler system. My knees were stiff, an old ache I'd come to expect. I sat on the edge of the bed for a few seconds before standing up. My fingers brushed over the crumpled memo pad beside me, a handwritten list of everything I needed to prep for the day. Technically, this party was supposed to be organized by Brian and Natalie. But of course, they only came up with the idea. The execution, that naturally fell to me. "It's just easier at your place," Natalie had said on the phone. "Your backyard's bigger and gets more sun." She paused, then added, "And the kids love your blueberry muffins." It sounded like a compliment, but I knew it meant I'd be handling everything. She followed up with a long string of screenshots. Cream cheese puffs, mini cheeseburgers, Sophie's favorite chocolate chip pancakes. Even the drinks had notes. Not from concentrate, cold-pressed only. I put my phone down, took a deep breath. It would be a lie to say I wasn't tired. Still, I replied, "No problem." I tied on my apron, flicked on the kitchen lights. As the refrigerator light hummed on, I felt like a stagehand behind the curtain, setting the scene for a grand family production. Corn chowder simmered on the stove. A cream cake, prepped the night before, was rising in the oven. I whipped the frosting, wrist turning steadily, listening to the mixer buzz like a ritual chant echoing through the quiet house. By 9:30, Brian and his family arrived. "Mom, we're here," Brian called out as he pushed the door open. His voice still sounded like the boy who used to burst into the kitchen after soccer practice. But he wasn't that boy anymore. Behind him was Natalie in beige heels, her coat draped over her arm, holding a clear plastic box. "You didn't get the tablecloth on yet?" she asked, eyeing the setup. "Didn't you have a pale gold one last time? This blue clashes with the balloon colors." I looked up, smiling. "The gold one got ruined in the wash last year. This one's new." Her gaze shifted to the drink bucket. "Is orange juice all we've got? We usually do lemon soda. Lucas doesn't like anything too sweet." I swallowed the words, "You didn't mention that," and instead said, "I can check the fridge again." "Oh, don't bother." She waved a hand like brushing away lint. "I'm just saying." Lucas spotted the birthday present I had set out for him the moment he walked in, but quickly tossed it aside like a piece of trash. It was a light gray-blue hand-knit sweater, made with the softest merino yarn I could find. I'd sewn a little lion on the chest. It sat in a neatly wrapped box on the kitchen sideboard. "You still knit?" Natalie glanced at it, let out a soft laugh. "Wow, you've really got time on your hands. But don't waste the effort, he's not gonna wear that." My hand paused mid-wipe on the carving knife. She didn't wait for an answer. She was already headed outside to inspect whether the balloons were symmetrical enough. I lowered my gaze and kept working, but something was lodged in my chest like a stone. By 10:30, Angela's family showed up, fashionably late. The car door slammed shut, followed by Max's shriek, "Let me out. I want to go in first." Thudding footsteps pounded the hall, straight onto the freshly mopped wood floor. He held half a cream donut, icing smearing everywhere as he ran. "Max." Angela called after him, juggling her phone and her parenting. "Don't make a mess." But she didn't even look up. Phone pressed to her ear, voice rushed. "Yeah, I'll be in San Francisco next Wednesday morning." "No, let John cover that first. Listen to me." I took Max's coat from his arm, led him to the bathroom and closed the door behind him. I could still hear Angela's heels crossing the living room floor, her voice carrying through the hallway. "She's used to doing everything. Just let her handle it, don't worry," she said breezily, like she was commenting on the weather. He was talking to Dennis. He had been standing by the kitchen doorway, halfway to helping me plate the appetizers. I saw his hand extend, then freeze midair when his wife's words reached him. Dennis nodded and stepped back. But when his eyes met mine, there was an awkward, flickering guilt in them. The party picked up quickly. Kids were shrieking and chasing each other around the backyard. Max tumbled headfirst into the grass and came up with mud all over his pants. Natalie glanced over and said, "It's fine. He's having fun." Lucas was spinning in circles beneath the balloons, while Sophie and two girls huddled in a corner working on a collage. I was in the kitchen laying out salad, fruit tarts, a platter of wings, keeping one eye on the soda bucket to make sure there was enough lemon and grape soda to go around. When it came time for the family photo, I was still drying my hands, getting the last batch of chicken bites out of the oven. Sophie came running in, tugged at my apron and chirped, "Grandma, come on, we're taking pictures." "She can finish up first," Angela said, appearing behind her and casually redirecting her daughter without missing a beat. "She'll be there in a minute." I stood at the kitchen door, watching them line up in front of the wicker chairs. Brian with his arm around Natalie, Dennis with a hand on Angela's shoulder, kids beaming like a family from a commercial. The camera shutter clicked just as I stepped forward, still holding a tray of Lucas's favorite chicken nuggets. The steam rose around me in little clouds and suddenly my eyes stung. In that moment I felt like I wasn't part of the picture. I was part of the backdrop. The quiet figure behind the scenes, always busy, never in the frame. By the time I set the tray down and looked up again, the group had already scattered. Angela was back on her phone. Natalie was scrolling through the party photos, zooming in to check if she looked good. The kids were gone, vanished into the yard or the house. I turned back toward the kitchen. Cake crumbs dusted the counter. The sink was piled with bowls, glasses, one overturned juice cup and 2 crumpled towels smeared with frosting. A thought flickered through my mind like a match strike. How did I become the stagehand in my own family's life? I couldn't even remember the last time I sat on the couch and ate a piece of cake without jumping up mid-bite. The party ended faster than I expected. The noise vanished like a tide going out. One last kid ran out the back door with a balloon trailing behind him and then, slam, the door shut. Silence. Just juice stains, bits of cream and me. I stood by the door and watched them load the cars. Angela waved as she slammed the trunk shut. "Mom, I'm flying to Chicago next week," she called out. "I'll pack tonight. Can you come by in a couple days to check Sophie and Max's school schedule?" I nodded. I hadn't even caught the full sentence. I just nodded because that's what I always did. Natalie, on her way into the car, casually handed me a few bags of half-eaten snacks. "You keep these. No sense wasting them." She didn't mention the sweater. Lucas left with every new toy he'd unwrapped, except one. The neatly packaged box with the hand-knit sweater sat untouched in the corner of my kitchen like a misplaced puzzle piece that didn't belong anywhere. "Grandma's sweaters are so old-fashioned," Lucas had said, tone dipped in mockery. Before I could react, Natalie chuckled, "Don't be so blunt." Then glancing my way she added without pause, "Marilyn, maybe next time skip the handmade stuff. He's into graphic hoodies now, not sweaters." She said it while shoving gift bags into the backseat. Not a trace of hesitation on her face. I stared at the box. The sweater lay inside, untouched. My chest clenched like something sharp had jabbed it. The car door slammed. The engine started. And then silence again. The kind that hums through your bones. Like the last few hours had never happened at all. I took off my apron and turned toward the kitchen. It was a war zone. Unfinished salad wilting on the counter, paper cups overturned. Max's donut lay on the carpet, flattened into a sticky black stain. In the sink, a greasy baking tray soaked in cold water. The cake knife stuck upright in a tub of frosting. A soggy dish towel lay slumped beside it. I bent down to pick up a shattered glass and the sharp edge nicked my fingertip. Blood welled instantly. I winced, pressing my thumb against it. The house was too quiet. So quiet I could hear my heartbeat, and the wall clock ticking like mockery. I sat in the kitchen chair, wrapping a paper towel around my finger, staring out the window. The sky was gray, the kind of heavy gray that presses on your shoulders. Wind nudged the balloons in the yard. They rustled softly, almost like laughter. And in that moment I didn't feel tired in the way that meant rest or sleep. I felt tired in my bones. The kind of tired that empties you out from the inside. I remembered another time I was cleaning the kitchen. Frank was on the couch watching a football game. I asked if he could take the trash out. He didn't even look up. "You do this stuff all day, it's not even real work. Why should I help?" I didn't say a word. Just picked up the garbage bag and walked out. It was windy that day, so windy I almost lost my footing. Even then I told myself, he's just not good at expressing himself. He loves me. He just shows it differently. But now I know better. That was just me lying to myself. The kitchen light cast shadows across my face. In the reflection on the oven door I saw myself. Fine lines at the corners of my eyes, pale skin, loose strands of hair not yet tied back, and those faint smudges under my eyes. And suddenly I asked myself, what am I to them really? A mother? A grandmother? Or just an endless supply of free labor? I remembered who I used to be. Back when I taught piano at the local music school. I wore kitten heels, curled my hair, wore lipstick. Frank used to say, when you play, you make the piano come alive. But after we got married, he changed. The world's too messy out there, he said. You're safer at home. After the kids were born, I tried going back to teaching. It didn't even last 3 months before the passive-aggressive remarks started. We don't need you bringing in money. I need you here, taking care of the house. So I gave in. Told myself it was for family. For love. For duty. And today the sweater I knitted with care was called, not useful. The party I planned from scratch was seen as expected, then picked apart detail by detail. They didn't even wait for me to join the family photo. When the glass cut my hand, not a single person asked, "Are you okay?" or said, "Let me help with that." That night I cleaned the kitchen inch by inch. Swept the crumbs, wiped the juice stains, picked up the broken glass, piece by piece. I folded Lucas's sweater carefully, laid it in the bottom drawer. Then I turned off the lights and sat alone in the living room. The room was dim. Street lights cast a pale glow through the window, landing on my hands, still wrapped in a paper towel to stop the bleeding. And I asked myself one question. How much longer do I keep doing this? The next morning, it wasn't even 8 when I heard the familiar slam of a car door. I didn't need to pull the curtain back, I already knew who it was. Angela's SUV stopped in the driveway. The tires were still rolling when Max jumped out, shouting, "I'm bringing the green skateboard inside." I opened the door. Angela was dragging a suitcase with one hand, phone clamped between her shoulder and ear, face tight with urgency and fatigue. She was mid-call, talking fast. "I'm at my mom's now. Yeah, I need that deck finalized before the morning briefing. Beth didn't respond yesterday." He gave me a look that meant, "Take the bag." I took it. Then gently grabbed Max by the sleeve as he started tearing apart my couch cushions. "Easy there, kiddo. Don't hide the remote again." Angela ended the call and flashed a mechanical smile. "Mom, you're amazing. Seriously. I've got to catch a flight. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. Today they're all yours." "I thought you said your trip was next week?" I asked, quiet but confused. She paused, blinked as if trying to recall her own timeline. Then let out a small laugh. "Flight changed. Booking's a nightmare lately, you know how it is." I didn't say anything. Just nodded. Max was already in the kitchen digging through drawers for candy. My freshly cleaned floors were stamped with muddy little footprints in less than 2 minutes. He picked up one of my spice jars, twisted the lid off and asked, "Grandma, can this be a rocket launcher?" "No," I said softly. "Put it down." He didn't. He twisted harder until, snap, salt exploded across the floor. He laughed like it was a masterpiece. Angela peeked in. "If he's too much, just plop him in front of the TV. He doesn't need to learn anything today anyway." I bent to grab the broom, lips parting, but no words came out. She pulled her suitcase to the door. "Oh, lunchboxes are in the fridge. Don't let Sophie eat too much sugar. She had a toothache yesterday." "What time do you land?" I asked. 3:30. "Dennis'll pick me up." "And the kids?" She waved a hand like brushing lint from a sleeve. "They're with you. Just like always." The door slammed shut. The house was quiet again, just me and the 2 kids. Max was zipping around the living room running takeoff experiments on his green skateboard. Sophie, on the other hand, was sitting quietly by the window coloring. She looked up at me and asked softly, "Grandma, why are you always so busy?" I froze. Her voice was purely curious, no judgment, no pity, just the kind of question only a child could ask. I didn't know how to answer. "Do you like doing all this?" she asked again. I smiled faintly and knelt beside her to tidy her papers. "I used to think I did. And now? No. I'm not so sure." She furrowed her little brows as if trying to figure out what I meant. But a second later she went right back to coloring her pink bunny. Around 10:30 the doorbell rang. It was Sharon, holding a bag of apple pie, wearing that old t-shirt with the little dove print and her usual bright grin. "I stopped by the farmer's market and thought of you," she said as she stepped in. "That party yesterday looked lively on Instagram." I gave her a weary smile. "Lively, yes. Cleanup was all me." "What again?" You did it all by yourself. I just nodded. She glanced around the kitchen and living room, then at Max crawling on the floor and whistled. You look like a full-time unpaid house manager. I laughed but didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. She was so right it actually stung a little. You're not their maid, Marilyn, she said calmly. You're not an on-call nanny. You're a person. With a name, with interests, with a pulse. Not some automated system for domestic operations. They're not bad people, I murmured. They're just used to me always being here. That's the problem, she said, leaning on the kitchen doorway. Once you become part of the scenery, they stop seeing you. Her words stopped me cold. I looked out the window at the bits of party ribbons still fluttering in the yard. A strange heaviness pressed against my chest. Have you ever thought about what would happen if one day you weren't here? She asked. I shook my head. My throat tightened. I never used to. Well, let's start thinking now. She flashed a grin and pulled a pink flyer from her tote bag. Women's Support Circle. Friday morning. I go every week. You should come. I took the paper. The soft pink background read. Being seen starts with showing up. My fingers burned a little as I held it. The cut from the broken glass still ached faintly. That's when it hit me. It hadn't healed. It was still bleeding, just quietly, just out of habit. I stared at the flyer and nodded slowly. I'll come. Sharon smiled. I'll pick you up. We made a plan. That Friday I was ready 20 minutes early. I wore a slate blue sweater and curled my hair slightly. In the mirror I didn't look like someone going to a gathering. I looked more like someone heading into an uncertain job interview. Sharon pulled into my driveway right on time, wearing sunglasses and waving out the window. Hop in. Today's lesson, how to stop saying sorry all the time. I laughed and got in the car. She had the radio on, an old Carole King song, It's Too Late. The soft rhythm, the lyrics, they felt like they were pulled straight from my chest. The women's circle met in the community room at the city library. A small, warm space with chairs arranged in a circle. Posters lined the walls. You're not alone. Stop shrinking to fit spaces you've outgrown. I hesitated when I walked in, unsure where to look. Everyone was chatting, smiling, like it was a reunion of longtime friends. I hovered by the doorway, feeling like a guest in the wrong movie. Sharon patted my shoulder. Sit here. I'll grab you some tea. I settled into a chair in the corner. Next to me was an older woman with a full head of silver hair, wearing a bold red jacket. She offered her hand. I'm Irene. Retired nurse. First time here. I nodded, trying to smile. Hi, I'm Marilyn. Firsts are hard, she said warmly. I came for the first time last year. Was so nervous I didn't say a word. Ended up crying anyway. I didn't even bring enough tissues. I chuckled, some of the tightness in my chest easing. The facilitator was a woman with lavender gray hair named Tamara. Her voice had a grounded strength, neither loud nor soft, like the crisp sound of a pencil moving across paper. She said, today's theme is, who I am is not defined by what I do for others. She asked each of us to share a moment when we'd recently felt unseen. When it was my turn, I shook my head. I don't really have anything to share. Sharon looked at me with gentle eyes. It's okay. We're listening. I opened my mouth, intending to say something light. But the moment I started speaking, the words poured out like a dam breaking. I spent 5 days last week planning my grandson's birthday party. I baked a cake, decorated the backyard, bought balloons, even made 4 types of salad. I paused, voice quiet. When they took the family photo, they didn't include me. Said I was still busy. The room went still. No one laughed. No one interrupted. Just a soft, steady silence of people holding space. I'm not asking to be thanked, I whispered. I just realized I've been taken for granted for so long, I forgot what it felt like to be seen. Irene passed me a tissue and I only then noticed the tears slipping from the corner of my eye. Tamara nodded. Being useful is not the same as being loved. The words hit something dull and buried in my chest. Useful. Frank's voice rose again in my memory like a skipping record. You take care of the kids in the house because that's your job. That's what women do, it's for the family. I didn't question it back then. Even years later I kept telling myself, you matter because you're useful. But today for the first time I saw it clearly. Useful isn't the same thing as loved. On the drive home, Nora Jones's Don't Know Why played softly in the car. The streets slipped past the window in slow motion, sunlight streaking across the windshield like a thin veil of time. Sharon didn't say much. She glanced at me occasionally but mostly let the silence stay. And I knew she understood exactly what I was going through. It wasn't sadness. It was a long overdue clarity. When I got home, I didn't head straight for the kitchen. Instead, I walked into the living room and opened a worn music folder I hadn't touched in years. My fingers brushed across the yellowing sheets, breathing in the faint scent of old paper and dust. I pulled out a piece, an old tune I used to teach, and sat down at the electric piano by the window. I used to be a teacher. A piano teacher. I pressed the first key. The sound was faint, a little shaky, but it was real. Outside, a neighbor walking her dog paused for a few seconds. He smiled, nodded, then kept moving. I played the entire piece. My hands trembled a bit. The keys were sticky with time. But I didn't stop. I wasn't playing for anyone else. At that moment, I just wanted to tell myself, I'm still here. That afternoon, the sun was just right. I'd just finished a Schubert piece and was about to close the piano lid when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Angela standing there, the kind of exhaustion on her face that left no room for small talk. She had a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Sophie stood behind her with her backpack, looking sullen. "Mom, I need a favor," Angela said right away. "Sophie's got camp next week and I've got a work trip. Dennis can take Max, but I'm completely out of options." I looked at her, calm and steady. "I've got rehearsal that week." She blinked, clearly not understanding. "You've got what?" "Rehearsal," I repeated, sitting back down on the couch. "There's a piano recital at the library next month." Angela stood frozen for a moment, confused. "What are you talking about? Since when are you taking piano lessons again? Can't you reschedule? This is important. Sophie needs you." "I need me too," I said, meeting her gaze. My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. Her face shifted. "You're refusing to help?" Her voice rose in disbelief. "You've never said no before." I nodded gently. "That's true. I didn't know I could." Angela dropped the bag to the floor, her frustration simmering. "Do you know how busy I am? If I land this client, I'll get promoted by the end of the year. And you're choosing a recital over helping your granddaughter." I didn't answer directly. I just looked at her, the way you might look at a version of yourself from long ago. The kind of woman who always put others first until there was nothing left of her. Sophie tugged lightly at her mom's sleeve. "Can we just go home?" she asked softly. Angela looked down at her daughter and something in her face shifted. The anger ebbed a little, replaced by something messier. He picked up the bag. "Fine. I'll figure something else out." She turned to go, but I called after her. "Angela." She didn't turn around. "I'm not saying I won't ever help you. I'm just saying I can't be the person who never has a life of her own." She stood at the door for several seconds before muttering, "I didn't expect you to turn into this." "And I never expected I could," I said quietly. The door closed. My heart was pounding. My palms were slick with sweat. I sat on the couch for a long while. Then my phone rang. "Brian." "Mom, did you forget to pay for Lucas's summer camp?" he asked right away. Natalie's card got declined and said the charge hadn't gone through. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "I didn't forget," I replied. "I've decided I won't be covering your children's expenses anymore." Silence. "What? Since when?" he snapped. "You said." "That was before," I interrupted. "Starting now, you and Natalie are Lucas's parents. His needs are your responsibility. My retirement fund isn't a backup account for your household budget." There was a pause. Then his voice turned accusatory. "Did Angela say something to you? Is she putting ideas in your head?" No one said anything. I stood, walking toward the window, looking out at the roses in the garden. "I've just decided to spend my time and money on things that matter to me." "You've changed." His voice dropped. "Yes, I've changed." Then I added, "And maybe I changed far too late." I hung up. A month ago, if someone had told me I'd be sitting in a sunroom with a dozen women, singing "You've Got a Friend," I probably would have smiled and said, "That sounds like someone else's life." But here I was, settled into a slightly worn yet sturdy folding chair, a cup of coffee in hand, sunlight streaming in through the blinds, pooling in stripes across the floor. Around me sat silver-haired women, bright-eyed and animated. We were Coastal Voices, a local women's arts group for seniors. The members ranged in age from 62 to 78. Some had been nurses, some lawyers, one had danced professionally on Broadway. Different lives, different histories, but every single one of them had been invisible once. To family, to society, to themselves. It was my first rehearsal. I was nervous, sat off to the side with my sheet music and a bottle of water. Lana, the group leader, was a former musical theater performer. Her ponytail bounced when she walked, her voice as bright as a silver bell. "Marilyn, over here, we saved you a good seat," she called. They welcomed me in like I'd always belonged. We started with warm-up exercises. I couldn't quite match the tempo at first and my voice barely left my throat. Lana came over and patted my shoulder gently. "Don't worry," she said. "This is our world. No judges, no audience." I smiled. Slowly, my voice began to blend into the harmony, like a drop of water finally finding its stream. After rehearsal, we sat around chatting. One woman shared how she left an unhealthy marriage in her 60s. Another spoke about her solo road trip after losing her husband. Someone else recounted the joy of filing her taxes alone for the first time and getting it right. I listened, each story peeling back a layer I didn't know I was still hiding beneath. It stung a little, but it also felt like breathing. Sharon gave me a knowing wink. "Told you, you belong here." I nodded, my eyes stinging. I wasn't just useful in a life someone else had scheduled for me. I was wanted, in a life I chose for myself. After lunch, someone suggested we each play a favorite piece. I hesitated, then walked slowly toward the upright piano. I played Edelweiss. It's not a hard song. The melody is soft, familiar. I used to play it for Angela when she was little. She always said, "This one sounds like flowers blooming." When I finished, the room filled with applause. But it wasn't the polite kind you get when your kid says, "Thanks, Mom." It wasn't the occasional "not bad" Frank used to mutter. This was real. This was applause for me. I stood and said quietly, "It's been over 20 years since I played a full piece in front of anyone." Connie, the woman seated beside me, reached over and squeezed my hand. "You play like you never stopped." That afternoon back home, my phone lit up, Angela's name on the screen. I didn't answer. Not out of anger, but because I'd finally realized something. I didn't need to be available at all times. My time could be mine. I made a cup of lemon tea, opened the living room curtains. The light poured in like a quiet permission slip. The sweater still lay at the bottom of the drawer. I didn't touch it. Sophie's voice came back to me. "Grandma, why are you always so busy?" I hadn't answered her then. But now I knew the truth. Because I never stopped long enough to ask myself what I wanted. I sat down at the piano, opened the old music book once again. At that same moment, Angela was sitting on a bar stool in her kitchen, listening to the final beep of my voicemail before it clicked off. Her face was tight, one hand pressed to her temple. Dennis walked in holding a scrap of paper. Sophie's drawing, a crayon sketch that read, "I miss Grandma." Angela sighed. "She's completely shut us out now." Dennis leaned against the fridge, his voice calm but firm. "No. She's finally paying attention to herself." Angela looked at him, lips pressed into a cold, thin line. "Easy for you to say." "I'm not saying it to be smug," he said, pausing as he glanced at the drawing. "You know, my mom raised me alone after her divorce. She worked at a bank. Day shifts, night shifts. I'd wake up at midnight and the kitchen lights would still be on. She'd just finished closing reports and she'd be packing my lunch and washing my uniform." He looked up, voice softer. Her eyes were always red. But she never said a word. Angela stayed quiet. "I couldn't do anything to help then," Dennis said. "But I remember she'd stand at the stove sometimes just staring at the pot. Like she forgot who she was." "Marilyn's not your mom." "No," he said. "She's stronger. She lasted longer. And when someone holds everything together for too long, the moment they stop, you better not stand in their way." He looked her in the eye. "A woman can hold up the sky. But she can also get so tired she can't see herself anymore." Angela didn't respond. Outside, the garbage truck rumbled by. She glanced toward the sound, then seemed to remember something. How even taking the trash out had never been her job. The invitation came on a Tuesday morning, unexpected and quiet. I was just about to head out for rehearsal when I found it in the mailbox. An envelope made of thick cream-colored paper, stamped with the logo of the local library. It felt almost like an old-fashioned concert invitation, the kind from decades ago. My fingertips trembled as I held it. As I opened the letter, I could hear Frank's voice in my head. "You're a housewife. Stop wasting time dreaming about nonsense." But the words on the page silenced him instantly. "Dear Marilyn, we are honored to invite you to perform as a solo pianist at the upcoming Voices of the City Women's Arts Gala, to be held on the 25th at City Hall. We believe that a voice is more than a sound, it's proof of presence." I read it 3 times before I believed it was real. That afternoon I brought the letter to our group. The room erupted. Music sheets nearly went flying. Lana hugged me and spun me around. "I knew someone would discover you. You play like you're telling the truth." Sharon leaned in, grinning. "You better wear red that day. Red means you're not in the background anymore." I shook my head, laughing. "I'm not making a comeback. I'm just playing one song." She tilted her head, suddenly serious. "You were always meant to be on a stage." A few days later she came with me to a small boutique in town. We were flipping through rows of scarves when she pulled out a red wool one from the back corner and draped it over my shoulders. "This one. You wear this and no one's gonna mistake you for part of the wallpaper." I glanced in the mirror. There stood a woman, upright and still, her neck wrapped in warmth and color. A single word floated into my mind: present. I was here. And I was seen. The day of the performance, sunlight poured down in rare, golden streaks. There was already a line outside City Hall. I entered through the side door with my performer's badge, changed clothes and waited backstage. The MC was warming up the crowd. My hands were cold. My heartbeat rattled like it did the very first time I stepped on stage in my 20s. I glanced at my phone. A message from Angela lit up the screen. "Client crisis. Stuck at the office. Can't make it tonight. Good luck." I stared at the message. No anger. No sadness. Just nothing. Her absence no longer defined my worth. A few minutes before my set, the backstage door creaked open. Dennis stepped in, holding Sophie's hand. "Hope it's okay we came uninvited," he said quietly. Sophie ran up to me, eyes wide. "Grandma, I wore the yellow dress you like." I hugged her. My heart bloomed with something like sunlight. Dennis came closer, his voice warm. "I told her tonight you'd be like a magician." I smiled. "I'm just an old lady who plays piano." He shook his head. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known." That nearly broke me. All the weight I'd carried alone, years of being unacknowledged, dismissed, expected, suddenly lifted. For the first time, a man didn't just notice. He respected it. When I stepped on stage, the house lights dimmed softly. In the 3rd row I spotted Sophie, sitting still, hands clasping her little stuffed doll, her eyes fixed on me. I sat at the piano. As my fingers touched the keys, it felt like something lifted me. I played Moon River. A song slow and wistful, soaked in nostalgia. I had practiced it every evening for 2 weeks, unsure if I had the right to choose it. But as the notes flowed, I felt something I hadn't in years: ease. I wasn't performing for approval. I wasn't worried about being liked. Each note said one thing: you deserve to be heard. When I struck the final chord, the applause came. Not polite. Not forced. It was rich, sustained, full of something that sounded like recognition. Sophie jumped to her feet, cheeks flushed, clapping hard. "Grandma, you were amazing," she cried. Dennis stood too, his eyes shining. He didn't say anything, but his nod held a kind of reverence. A nod that said, "I see you now." I couldn't stop the tears. They slid down quietly without shame. The next morning, Sophie sent me a voice message. Her tiny voice crackled through the speaker. "Grandma, when you played piano, I thought you were like the fairy tale lady who turns moonlight into music." I laughed. Something long frozen inside me began to thaw. But elsewhere a storm was forming. Angela opened her front door just as Sophie rushed in, waving a photo. "Mom. Grandma on stage. She was amazing." Angela froze. She took the photo. On the back, written in messy, innocent handwriting, "My grandma is a star." Her face darkened. "You took her?" she snapped, spinning toward the kitchen where Dennis was setting down a kettle. Dennis nodded, calm. "Yes. I took her. You didn't even ask me." Her voice rose. "She's my mother, not yours." Dennis leaned against the counter. "You're her daughter. But you've never truly seen her. Angela scoffed. Oh, stop. I grew up with her. I know what she's like. He's always been like this. Organizing, fussing, cleaning, worrying about everyone. She doesn't know how to sit still. Angela, Dennis said quietly, she's not a role. She's a whole person. Have you ever asked if she still wants to be doing all of this? Angela's brow furrowed, her voice defensive. You don't get it. You didn't grow up with her. She's always been the type to take on everything, and then act like it's no big deal. She's not okay with it. She just hasn't been allowed to have an opinion, Dennis replied, his voice lower now. I was raised by a single mom. I know what it looks like when a woman's holding up a home completely on her own. I'll never forget the look in her eyes, like she forgot who she even was. And that look, I still see it in Marilyn sometimes. Angela faltered, her voice softening slightly. So what? She never said she didn't want to. She's saying it now. Dennis's voice was steady, unwavering. You're just so used to her silence meaning everything's handled, that when she finally speaks up, you take it as betrayal. Angela's gaze wavered, but she held on to her pride. I have work. I have pressure. I'm holding this whole family together. I can't do everything. Dennis didn't push. He simply said, no one's asking you to do everything. But you need to realize, taking care of everyone shouldn't be a lifetime sentence for your mother. Angela opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no answer. That same moment I was at home sifting through an old drawer when I found a photograph. Angela was 6. I'd taken her to her first piano concert. She sat on my lap, her eyes wide with wonder, fixed on the stage. Back then she'd say, Mom, when I grow up I want to play piano too. But she grew up. And now she's the one telling her kids, don't bother Mommy, she's working. I don't blame her. It's not all her fault. She was raised to believe, my mom is supposed to be like this. Quiet, reliable, non-disruptive. I no longer wonder when they'll understand me. All I know is, I'm not going back to the kitchen. From today forward, I will no longer be the silent footnote of my own life. Later that afternoon, I just wrapped up a lunch hour rehearsal and was about to head to the market when my phone rang. It was Brian. Hey Mom. We're planning Thanksgiving this year, inviting a few friends over. Natalie thought it'd be easier if we did it at your place again. More space outside and you're great with the food. We'll bring dessert, just easier with the kids not tearing up our house. I stood at the car, hand on the door handle. Paused. I already have plans for Thanksgiving, I said. I'll be assisting at a piano salon that day. There was a beat of silence as if he hadn't processed it. You have plans? Yes. I've helped organize a silver arts program for the community. I'm managing logistics and performance coordination. I opened the car door and got in. So no, I won't be hosting this year. His voice lifted slightly. But we've already told people. Natalie sent out the invites. They're expecting to have dinner at your house. You can't just back out. I heard that phrase, your house, and felt the irony twist inside me. It only became our home when they needed something. You can tell them your mom will be at the piano this year, not making mashed potatoes, I said calmly. He hesitated, then replied with a touch of sarcasm. Let me guess, Angela got to you. You two are both in this whole independence phase. Or something now. No, I said evenly. It's because I never used to understand the word boundaries. You're a father. You're a husband. Your household should not depend on a 66-year-old woman to carry your logistics and your finances. Another pause. Then his voice turned cutting. So what, you're just going off to live your little life now? You could say that. I smiled. Oh, and tell Natalie to stop forwarding your mortgage statements to me. They're not my problem. They never were. I slipped my phone into my purse, hands resting on the steering wheel. I didn't turn the key right away. This was my first time refusing their holiday nomination. No guilt. No second-guessing. Just freedom. That afternoon, I walked into the community center's activity room. Our Silver Keys piano class was in week 6. The group had grown from 4 to 9 women. 2 of them drove 40 minutes from the next town just to be here. Grace wore a golden knit sweater, which she announced was her performance color for the day. She was still working on a C major arpeggio, but her laugh echoed louder than her notes. I had everyone play a piece they were most familiar with. Some picked childhood nursery songs. One attempted a broken line of A Christmas Carol. When it was my turn, I played Claire de Lune. The moment the first note sounded, the room fell completely still. Grace watched me closely, then whispered, "You should have been on stage 20 years ago." I looked at her and smiled. Back then I thought the kitchen was my stage. She stared, then reached for my hand and gave it a quiet squeeze. After class, I wrote my favorite quote on the blackboard. "You're not too late. You're right on time." That evening, I got a message from Natalie. "Since you're not helping with Thanksgiving this year, we've decided to go out. Lucas was hoping for your pumpkin pie, but oh well." I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood. Their disappointment was never my burden to carry. I stood in the doorway of my kitchen, eyes resting on the worn yellowing recipe binder beside the oven. I realized I hadn't touched it in 3 weeks. And for the first time I didn't feel guilty. I no longer needed to bake to prove I was lovable. That weekend I attended another women's empowerment forum hosted by the library. Sitting among strangers who felt oddly familiar, I heard a speaker say something that etched itself into me. We were never born to be someone's something. We were born whole. I wrote it in my notebook and circled it in red. I wasn't just Brian's mom. Or Lucas's grandmother. I was Marilyn Thompson. Piano teacher. Community volunteer. A woman with a life of her own. And that identity needed no one's approval. The weather had turned. Leaves fell from the sycamores in crisp, quiet showers. I took down the summer wind chimes and replaced them with a soft fabric wreath in autumn tones. When the wind blew, it no longer chimed, it whispered. As if reminding me, it's time for a seasonal change. Maybe even a different season for mothers and daughters. Angela no longer called as often. She didn't ask me to babysit or to handle her household emergencies. But I could feel her, circling back. One afternoon, just after I finished teaching a Silver Keys class, I was putting away sheet music when I heard a familiar voice at the door. "Mom." I turned. Angela stood there, coat still on, Sophie's hand in hers. One foot already inside the classroom. "Can we just listen for a bit?" I nodded. No questions. Sophie ran over, beaming. "Grandma, what are you playing today?" I picked her up and settled her on a chair. "Over the Rainbow." Angela remained near the door, watching. But not with impatience or distance. Her expression was complicated. She was seeing me, maybe for the first time, not as someone who filled the gaps, cooked, cleaned, cared, but as a person who was respected, heard, and needed in a room full of women. She whispered a hello to Grace beside her. Grace smiled and said, "Your mom's eyes light up when she plays." I saw that comment ripple through her like a small stone dropped in deep water. She sat in a corner seat, gripping her purse strap, silent. And she stayed that way until the last note rang out and the room erupted in applause. Then she exhaled, like surfacing from underwater. After class she lingered. I was gathering books when she approached me slowly. "When I was a kid, didn't you used to play that song every Christmas?" I paused. "Yes. You were in The Wizard of Oz that year. I played it every day for you to practice." She nodded softly. Her eyes misted. "I think I forgot that," she said quietly. But today when Sophie heard it, she held my hand and asked, "Mommy, did Grandma play that for you when you were little?" She smiled faintly, but her eyes brimmed with guilt. I didn't know how to answer. It took me a long time to remember. I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. Her voice was raspy with emotion. "I always thought of you as part of the kitchen. The person who opened the door, cooked the meals, drove the carpools, fixed the band-aids. And somewhere along the way, I became just like Dad. I didn't interrupt. He never listened to you, never gave you space to dream. And somehow I followed in his footsteps and pushed you right back into the same mold." Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't want to be that person anymore, Mom. I really don't." I took a deep breath and set my sheet music aside. "I'm not here to blame you," I said, stepping closer. "I just want you to see me. I was never just your mother. Or his wife. I'm a woman. A person." She lowered her head and finally the tears fell. "You've done so much better than I have." I gently held her hand. "We're all just women," I said softly. "Learning how to be mothers, and how to be more than mothers." She looked up, eyes shining. "Could I learn to play piano with you?" I smiled. Of course. But fair warning, I'm a tough teacher. She laughed through the tears and then hugged me. In that moment we were two whole people. Not roles. Not obligations. Just women. Reaching for each other again. That night at dinner, Sophie handed me a drawing. "This is you playing the piano," she said. "And Mommy's next to you. And I'm in the middle." I looked at the crayon lines, simple, colorful, filled with joy. And I felt a kind of tenderness I'd never known before. I finally understood. Some wounds don't close with silence. They stay open, just long enough to grow something new. And Angela and I, we were finally beginning a different kind of mother-daughter journey.